Are you feeling a little bit stressed out, a bit anxious, maybe even worried or concerned about certain aspects or areas of your life? And you can't really gain a grasp as to why you feel this way or what you can do about it, but you just know that there is a inner sensation. There's a feeling within you that feels a little bit chaotic, even though you're functional, you're able to function day to day and do your daily task and handle your responsibilities. There's something else that's going on that you can't quite pinpoint. Well, I'm here to help you and give you some insight as to what exactly that is and how you can actually transform that to help you to create the life that you want. My name is Peter Abundant, aka Dr. Abundant, PhD and ordained minister of metaphysical sciences. I also am the author of The Enlightened Shadow and Spiritual, Not Religious, which is available on Amazon. My job is to help and support you to gain and understand the deeper meanings as to things that are going on in your life. Because most times when we deal with life, we often look at things very, superficially, from a very shallow point of view and perspective, when in fact, all of the things that you're experiencing in life has deeper meaning. And it is up to you and up to me to support you in actually seeing what those deeper meanings are, so that way you can understand that the universe is with you, not against you. And so when it comes to this feeling that you have of anxiety, worry, concern, a little bit of angst, right? A little bit of just feeling uneasy. One thing you have to understand in its most simplistic form is that you are a combination of two things. In spirituality, we call those two things consciousness and ego. Now, in reality, you are just one thing, which is consciousness. But because we are here in this realm of reality, right, this place we call it Earth, there needs to be a counter to that. There needs to be a contrast to that. When you look at all of the universe, you study all of that, what is, you acknowledge and see that there are always opposites to something. And so by understanding and recognizing that law of nature of the universe, then that also applies to you as you live in this reality, as you live in this universe. And so your contrast, or the opposite of your consciousness, is your ego. Now, what is the ego about, right? Because consciousness, if that is the purest aspect of who you are, that is your divine self, that is the part of you that can tap into infinite knowledge and is a spark of infinite wisdom and consciousness. We know what that is, right? We can really conceptualize easily what consciousness is. It's your ability to be aware, to be mindful. The fact that you exist is evidence of consciousness. But then when we talk about ego, there's a little bit of a question mark as to what that is. Most people understand ego as a thing that gets us in trouble, right? And that is fairly accurate, but that is not all there is to the ego. What we fail to understand is that the ego does have its place. The ego does have a job to do, just like everything else. When we look at the universe, there is a reason why it exists. And so with the ego, what the ego does for you is it creates a balance, right? Where though you are, yes, a spiritual being living a human, right, in a human body, right, having a human experience, that human experience is accompanied by the ego. Because you are in this human body, you have to be mindful about things like physical harm, even things like emotional harm, right? And so the ego's job is to essentially protect you from those forms of harm. Now, the complexities of being or living this human experience is that there are many layers, and the idea of harm can be very subjective. And so the ego is, by means of acknowledging that subjectivity, is trained to recognize certain dangers and separate them from others. So what your ego may identify as a trigger for you, my ego may not identify that as a trigger for me. So it is customized to you depending on how you grew up, okay, depending on how you were raised and what things happened to you in your life. Now, the ego wants you to be safe. It wants you to find comfort. The problem is, though, the ego doesn't like change, whereas consciousness recognizes that growth, that evolution, that personal fulfillment, that self-realization as to who you truly are requires change. Change is the thing that is prominent and is always in existence in the reality of our universe. Change is always there. Change is the thing that never changes. Okay. So the ego, because it is the furthest thing from consciousness, it doesn't want change. So it tries to identify and stay locked into an existence where it knows what's going on. It's relatively comfortable, meaning that it doesn't like dealing with the unknown, right? Because the unknown, as far as it's concerned, creates friction and creates a space where things can and will be, moved and flexible, and it can't find a position to just stay put, right? And just be comfortable and just lounge. So whenever change is available, right, or change is happening, because it is always happening, the ego is going to create resistance. All right. So now, when we get back to the question as to why do you feel this angst, this, sense of chaos, this frustration, this uneasy feeling within you, it's because change is happening. Okay. And your ego does not want to let go of what is. And it doesn't even matter if you are obviously in a space where you are uncomfortable, you are in a bad relationship, you are financially struggling, you are unhealthy, overweight, you lack physical fitness and ability, you can't even get up and spend time and take walks and things of that nature. All of the things that we often associate with just really not being happy and fulfilled. The ego, even though your conscious mind recognizes that this isn't the way you're supposed to live life, your ego will still sit in a space of, but we know this, right? This is something that is similar, right? It is familiar to us. And that is what I mean by comfort. That's what I mean by it will want to just be in that place because it knows that. Whereas consciousness is constantly telling you to walk the path, to keep moving, to continue to move through life and to evolve and to come into understanding who you truly are. You see? So you have to understand that the feeling that you are feeling right now, okay, whatever worry or concern that you're having, is evidence that the ego is facing change. Now, when we are on this conscious spiritual journey, when we begin this journey, we are only focused in on our conscious level of awareness, right? So consciously, we are just observing things and we're aware of things, and we're not recognizing things like consciousness. We're not recognizing subconscious mind, the unconscious, right? We're not recognizing the ego. But as you continue to take this journey, you'll start to understand that there are other aspects of you, right? Those things which are communicating to you in different ways because they are experiencing different things that your conscious mind is not quite aware of yet. Your conscious mind is more aware of the superficial outside things that you see, right? You touch, you feel, right? But the things going on internally, many times, unless you train that ability, you're not able to acknowledge and hear them yet, right? You're not able to receive and translate what that means yet. So what's happening though is your ego, because it is changing or recognizing change is happening, it is being resistant. And that unease that you feel happening is an indicator that the ego recognizes transformation is taking place. It recognizes that there is a shift happening within you that is about to express itself outward and change the structure, the nature, the experience of your universe, your outside world. So your ego, in a sense, is a little bit more in tune with who you are and what's happening within you than your conscious mind. Okay. The conscious mind is almost like your eyes, where you can see something and you only see the physical. But when you go beyond that, right, you can start to do meditations and things of that nature to build up the skill to feel energy, to feel sensation, to get a sense of vibes and frequencies. Okay. So your conscious mind is very superficial, but your ego is very dialed in to your consciousness because your ego is a byproduct, is the opposite, right? It is on the other spectrum of your totality. So you have to understand that the ego is going to see and hear and understand what's happening quicker than your conscious mind will. But the problem is your ego, if you are led by the ego, you identify with, the past or identify with this or that, then it is going to influence you more toward fighting the transformation. Okay. That's why we experience things like fear or anxiety when opportunities come our way. The opportunities are coming your way because consciousness is bringing those things to you because you are matching the frequency of those opportunities. So when consciousness attracts those opportunities to you, if you're not trained to understand opportunities, you're not trained to see synchronicities, to recognize signs like numerology, angel numbers, or what have you, then the opportunity will be right there in front of you, ready for you to receive. But your ego, because it doesn't want to change or experience change, it will cause you to feel fear, to feel doubt, to feel like that wasn't meant for you, to feel like you're not ready, that you're not smart enough. Okay. All the excuses that we give ourselves when having an opportunity to move forward and follow our dreams comes forward. Now, your job is to understand the difference between fear and reality. Fear is a thing that is a byproduct of your imagination, but it is driven by the ego. Okay. Reality is understanding consciousness and the fact that what it is, like what opportunity that comes to you is here now, right? Here and now, ready for you to receive it and take it and act upon it. The issue is many times the fear from the ego will say, well, if you take this, right, these are the things that may go wrong, which most likely, highly likely will never happen. It never goes wrong like we imagine it to do. And that's because, again, the ego has many layers to it. So even if you cater to the opportunity, you receive the opportunity, you take on the opportunity, the ego has a way of manipulating the situation because it is driven by comfort, fear. It wants you to be the same because it really wants to protect you, right? The problem is it wants to protect you and it comes from a good place, right? Because when we first came to this planet, as we evolved, we were in some very treacherous environments. Okay. We were trying to survive. We were trying to just basically, we were living like cavemen, so to speak, where we were just, hunting and gathering and fighting each other, tribal wars, things of that nature, and just basically wanting to survive. That was how we were, how our existence started in this realm, in this physical earth. And so we are still evolving from that primal mindset. Okay. And so you have to recognize that the ego is still kind of stuck in that primal mindset where even though we're not fighting or having tribal wars and we're not, hunting and gathering, right? We're not hunting and gathering. There is still a sense of, okay, is this safe or is this dangerous? All right. Really, it's really asking the question, is this dangerous? It's always asking the question, is this dangerous? Is this dangerous? And you have to convince the ego that it is not dangerous, that it is safe. And so that really takes the experience of doing it. You have to observe and analyze with your conscious mind and say, hey, based on what I'm noticing, the patterns and everything that I've witnessed, this looks and appears to be safe. Even though you haven't done anything yet, because as far as the ego is concerned, this is not safe unless we have actual experience, which is proof that it is safe. And so you have to push past the fear of the ego trying to protect you in order to prove that it is safe by doing it. This is why the hardest thing to do is the first time, right? It's harder to do something the first time than ever before. But once you do it that first time, something shifts, right? So recognize that this angst, this energy is about a transformation that is happening, right? And it can be on multiple levels. One is simply a transformation of you just simply coming into self. But another is a transformation of you recognizing an opportunity that is before you that aligns with your goals, your ideas, your aspirations, even your curiosity. And the ego saying, we're not good enough. The ego saying, I'm not, smart enough. I'm not prettier enough. I'm not handsome enough. Whatever the things or the excuses are, I'm not fit enough, right? I can't do that. I can't do this. It is giving you an opportunity to push past the barrier, the threshold of fear that the ego has created, and you to prove to the ego that this is safe, that this change is beneficial and it is okay. You see? So that's how you identify the difference and how you work through the difference between fear and reality. Fear is just an illusion, right? But growth requires stepping into the unknown. You see, and the unknown is where life actually happens, where evolution, where self-realization happens, where fulfillment happens, joy, happiness, right? These are the things that we all seek to experience. So you have to learn to surrender to the transformation, okay? Surrender to the transformation by trusting, okay? Trusting your ability to analyze a situation, right? This means being mindful. This means saying, okay, if you want to do something, you have to do your checks and balances, right? Cross your T's, dot your I's, do the due diligence, right? Or if it's something that is not so dire, but something that you are just curious by, you just have to follow that curiosity. You're curious for a reason because that is in your realm, the domain of your consciousness to explore. Because what that possibly is, it's your purpose, right? Your destiny. It is what you're made to do, right? That's the biggest possibility of you following your curiosity, and then you got to release expectations, because a lot of times we have these expectations based on looking at what other people have done and the results they have gotten, thinking that if they got it that way, I'm going to get it that way as well. And that's, because you're limited to the possibilities and the spectrum of the manifestation of it, right? The materialization of it, okay? Because you haven't seen anything else. You've only seen these people achieve that, and you kind of are interested by it, right? Intrigued by it. And so therefore you think that it's going to happen the same way. So let go of those expectations and recognize that you are an individual on your own individual journey. The most important thing is finding and understanding enjoyment in the thing that you're doing, okay? And not having an expectation as to what is going to come of it, but just being in a space where you recognize, right, that it is safe, right? So you can prove to the ego, and so the ego can relax, okay? And then allow yourself to simply be in the moment of enjoyment, of having fun, okay? that's what will allow you to embrace the change. Okay. And recognize that the change is really about upgrading yourself. It's really about recognizing that there is no sense of doing something and falling behind or falling short or being lesser than. You have to understand that throughout your life, every single thing that you do is going to take you just a notch up, is going to ascend your consciousness, is going to take you to another level. So when you recognize that everything that you do, every experience that you have, even if it is subjectively a quote unquote bad experience or a negative experience, that even in itself, and many times more so, going to elevate you to a much, much higher level than the small things or the safe things. Okay. When I mean safe, I mean like the small, minute changes. There's nothing wrong with the small, minute changes or opportunities, but as long as you take the opportunities, as long as you are mindful, you're responsible, and you recognize that every opportunity that comes before you is your consciousness having a communication with the grand universe, which is also an expression of who you are, is trying to have a back and forth dialogue with your conscious mind. You see, the universe is of you as well. You are one with the universe. So just like you have consciousness, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind, your ego, there is also the universe, right? You can look at the universe as the umbrella of all things that are you, and recognize that all of those aspects of who you are in communication with one another. You just have to learn to practice connecting with those things, understanding the dialogue, the language, right? So that way you can pinpoint it, you can hear it consciously in your conscious mind, thus make conscious decisions to move forward in creating the life that you want. And that's what it all comes down to. So all of that energy, worry, anxiety, heaviness, right? All that feeling, the yuckiness, that's really just the ego fighting the transformation. So what I want you to do, what I ask you to do, is to surrender to the transformation. Recognize that that's what's happening. So that way your ego will be at ease a little bit. Because see, just like I said, with all aspects of who you are, when you don't understand that the ego is expressing and feeling these feelings, and you're not understanding where that's coming from and why that is, your conscious mind just feels it, doesn't understand what it is. That creates more anxiety that is sent back to all the other aspects of who you are, except for your consciousness, right? Because consciousness knows already. Consciousness is the light. That's the guiding light that's trying to get you to where you're going. And it is going to get you there. It's going to get you to your destination of success and fulfillment and joy and all those things. But when you are not dialed into that fact and that actuality, and you're just listening to the ego, really not listening, but just feeling what the ego is feeling without getting into the understanding of the ego, then you start building up this sense of anxiety, this feeling, because now they are feeding one another, right? And then nothing happens, okay? Then everything is worked up to be something so much bigger than it is, as far as the fear that the ego brings to you, right? So you have to acknowledge what that is. The ego only fears change, okay? And so whenever you have those feelings, it is because consciousness is pushing you forward on your path. And you just have to acknowledge that and recognize, okay, ego, it's fine. We're not being chased by a lion, right? We have food to eat, right? Everything is okay, relatively speaking. I have food, I have shelter, I have clothes. I'm good. All right. That is what you do. And thus, take the opportunity that consciousness is delivering, the universe is giving to you, as a sign that it is time for you to ascend to another level of existence and beingness. All right. So it's just a matter of allowing yourself to surrender to the transformation. The caterpillar turns into a butterfly. Okay. That process is not pretty. All right. So when you think about the symbology of the caterpillar and it going into the cocoon and it turning into this liquid lava state, all right, that's basically a representation of the feeling that the ego is going through. All right. And when you recognize what it is, then the caterpillar actually begins to form into that butterfly and flies. All right. That is who you are. Okay. So I want you to fly. I want you to be free. Be free. Be yourself, your actual self. Thank you so much. Feel free to go to drabundant.com, subscribe to my daily newsletter, and get access to this free ebook, The Power Within. Continue to join me on this journey. Peace and abundance always.